Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin, and this is a holiday edition, a special of Levin TV. And this really is a big special defining America's governor, Ron DeSantis. DeSantis rose in the public eye to lead the fight against COVID in 2020, became the most influential governor in our country, signed a bill to teach kids about communism. He supported his wife through cancer in a great campaign. He sent illegal immigrants to Martha's Vineyard. He took away Disney's special privileges. He slashed taxes, and I could go on and on and on, and I think I will. Let's take a look. Go.
This is where freedom rings.
If you believe in America, if you believe in the Constitution empowers us. It's a new day. America's back. America's back, and America's going to get strong again. We're going to defend America, and we're going to defend our interests.
Liberty's voice, Levin TV.
Governor Ron DeSantis is truly an exceptional statesman. He's an exceptional statesman. He's an old friend of mine when he served in the House. As you know, I campaigned for him when he was running for governor. President Trump endorsed him. Take a listen to this. This is Ron DeSantis this week talking about how they're going to teach Floridians, students, about communism. Go.
Florida's governor signed 2 bills into law today. Ron DeSantis says it's about honoring victims of communism. One element of the new laws involves instruction, something that survivors say is crucial. From the Miami-Dade College campus today, Governor Ron DeSantis signed 2 bills that bring the impact of communism to light. He spoke about communist countries like China and Cambodia, but it was impossible to miss the connection between Florida and Cuba. The signing ceremony took place in Miami's Freedom Tower.
From 1959 to 1974, more than 650,000 Cubans came to the United States to flee the oppressive communist regime of Fidel Castro. Many of them came to South Florida, either by plane or by boat, and once they landed, they would be taken right here to the Freedom Tower, where they would receive assistance and began their new life in the United States.
The bill signed by the governor established November 7th as Victims of Communism Day. High school students learn about infamous regimes in communism. 3 roads will also be designated for 3 different Cubans who fought back against the Castro regime. And Freedom Tower gets $25 million from the state to complete structural repairs and invigorate the museum.
When you think of landmarks in American history, yes, of course, we think of things like the Statue of Liberty and places like Ellis Island, but the Freedom Tower really belongs right there alongside them. And so I think this tower is a reminder that freedom is not free.
This bill is so important because what you don't recognize and don't learn about, you tend to repeat. And so always keeping front and center that there are victims of communism, some that you will never see.
This is our Ellis Island in this community, and we will keep it. And this goes out to every single one of you who are here, who have fought this fight, and those who are no longer with us that have fought the fight.
We wanted to know, why was November 7th chosen as Victims of Communism Day? Well, that date in 1917 is when Vladimir Lenin led the revolt in Russia, widely considered the start of the worldwide movement of communism. Speakers at today's news conference say that movement has caused suffering that should never be forgotten.
Fantastic. And this is the way education should be managed in every state of the union. Instead, we have Marxist reprobates who are promoting Marxism and that ideology in elementary school, middle schools, high schools, definitely in colleges and universities. I mean, this is what's supposed to be done. You're supposed to reinforce Americanism, expose communism and these vile ideologies, promote capitalism rather than socialism, promote the Constitution rather than trash the framers of the Constitution. This is the way you build a healthy society. Now, I warn you, as most of you know, the View is basically a number of yentas who sit around, make no sense. One never-Trumper, Republican, and then 4 Democrats. And what a mess, what a mess. I don't know why people watch this. Is it like watching a car accident or something? I don't know. Go.
I don't understand, though, how you can call yourself a pro-business, pro-freedom of speech, small government, against canceling conservative, if you want to cancel one of the major corporations in Florida for freely speaking their mind.
Let me try this again, because she is as dim-witted as they come. And that's why she's on The View on ABC. This is not capitalism. When you give a corporation a part of your state, they're in charge of the tax base. They're in charge of all services. They're in charge of all utilities. In essence, again, you create a state within a state. That is a subsidy you're giving one corporation and no others. And it's not a matter of free speech. Oh, I know you have a lot of radical kook law professors. Oh, it's free speech, because it's the state imposing its will. They're free to speak all they want at Disney. Nobody's stopping them from speaking. Nobody's stopping anyone from speaking. But that doesn't mean you get a continued subsidy. I don't get subsidized. You get subsidized, Mr. Producer? You have your own state? No. I don't know of any other company that does. So it's not a matter of free speech when they're free to say whatever they want, but it has consequences. That's all. You go out in the middle of the street and let's do what the MSNBC said and teach people how to make napalm. Well, that could be illegal, actually. Okay, you go out in the middle of the street and you throw up. Then you go into the restaurant next door and you want to get hired. They say no. I say, well, that's my free speech. No, you threw up in the middle of the street. I don't have to hire you. Well, that's a loose parallel, but you get the point. So it's not a matter of free speech. That's number one. Number two, it's not capitalism. It's not fair competition. That's why a dummy on The View says what she says. Go.
Of their employees. And it's not like Disney went on an all-out war.
All the clapping seals in the audience. You notice how they bring in all the clapping seals? Nobody ever gets up and says, wait a minute, I have a question. They never bring those in, ever. That's a perfect picture of her right there, by the way. Go.
Against this bill. The CEO made a few statements. They weren't running ads. This was minimal. And he's, this war against Disney, and it's against Disney.
He didn't make minimal statements. He said they're going to work to reverse the law. So she's lying through her teeth. Go ahead.
The law was crafted in a way, taking away the special tax status, where it only affects Disney and about 4 other special taxing districts. There are 1,844 special taxing districts in Florida. And so it was...
Nobody, again, very clever, special taxing districts. So you could have nonprofit organizations, things of that sort, that have a special tax district or special tax status. That's not what we're talking about here. Are there 1,000 special tax districts that have their own police force, that have their own fire department, that have their own utility, that have their own street services, and on and on and on, basically run like a little city? No, there aren't. There's one. So she lies. And they always have to lie. They have to lie about what's in the bill. They have to lie about what Disney said they're going to do. Then they have to lie about the special tax status. It's more than a tax status. It's well beyond a tax status. Go ahead.
To penalize and take revenge against Disney for having dared...
Why are they penalizing and taking revenge against Disney? Now they're going to be treated like every other major corporation in Florida. They're not being penalized. They're not being targeted. They had these enormous special privileges that are being revoked. Revoked. I wish they would talk this way every time the Democrats come in and raise our taxes. Why are they penalizing these people? Because of their views? Because they're successful? Because they hire people? And so notice they never do that. So this is not a new argument she's making. She's a talking points kind of dummy on The View, but she is spewing what is the typical Democrat Party line. Those of you who say, and there are many of you, they come up to me, I love Trump, I voted for Trump, but I'd rather have DeSantis because there's less baggage there. You support whomever you want. Those are two great men. But I want you to understand something. They're going to do to DeSantis what they've done to Trump. Some of you may support somebody else. They're going to do to Ted Cruz what they've done to Trump. Tim Scott, Tom Cotton, Mike Pompeo, it doesn't matter. They're going to try to destroy them. And one of the reasons you like Trump so much and DeSantis so much is they fight back. They push back. I want you to think about something. We have these Republican governors like Larry Hogan of Maryland. You had this guy Baker in Massachusetts. You had Romney when he was in Massachusetts. They all moved left. They moved left in order to try and get bipartisan legislation done, quote unquote. So why not elect a Democrat? My question to you is this. Did they make any profound, lasting changes in their states? Nothing. Nothing. Ron DeSantis was elected by about 40,000 votes in a state with well over 20 million people, a state with 2.5 million more people than New York now. Did he look back and say, I got to be bipartisan, I got to figure out how to get along with the media, I got to do this, I got to... No, he said, all right, I have an agenda and I'm going to push it. I have 4 years, that's it. If I'm lucky, I'll get another 4 years. But I know my agenda is right for the people of Florida, regardless of party. I know it's right for liberty. I know it's right for economic growth. And we're going to take advantage of this. What has he done? He's profoundly changed Florida. He's profoundly strengthened the Republican Party. When he was elected, the Republican Party was a minority party. The Republican Party today is a majority party. Well, Mark, that's because people are moving into Florida. Right. And out of where? These other states. He's made Florida an attractive, free state, an attractive, prosperous state. And Florida is a very diverse state. The Panhandle looks nothing like, in terms of geography, and even in terms of demographics, it looks nothing like the southernmost point of Florida. This state has all kinds of people from all kinds of countries, from every state in the Union, with every kind of background, every kind of race, every kind of religion. It's got to be, if not the, but one of the most diverse states in the country. Ron DeSantis is such a fantastic individual in terms of his support for our country, his support for his state, and the support for the state of Israel. He's just a solid, traditional conservative, very, very sharp man. I think he's the best governor in the country. And so he's being interviewed by Ben Shapiro, and I thought this was particularly interesting. Here in part is what he has to say. Go.
We've had about a 400,000 shift from Democrat to Republican just since I've been governor. Not a little over 3 years ago, I took office. And so on this pace, by my election in 2022, we will have had probably over a 500,000 registration shift in just 4 years. That is incredible.
Now think about that. If you have a 500,000 registration shift, if the Democrats had a 400,000 lead, right, and you have 500,000 more Republicans, that's actually a 900,000 shift. Because you make up those 400,000, right? Then you have a 500,000 plurality. That is a massive shift. Larry Hogan in Maryland, there's no shift. There's no change in the politics in Maryland. He moved left. He was cutting deals with Democrats left and right. He worried about his own positioning so he could win re-election. He was there 8 years. And Republicans have figured out if they can squeeze in and get elected to these positions, if they move left, if they kowtow to the Democrats, they'll get part of the Republican Party. They'll get enough of the Democrat Party. They'll get all the positive press that they can. And the same thing this guy Baker did as governor of Massachusetts. The same thing Romney did when he was governor of Massachusetts. Same thing he's doing now. Go.
And so people will always ask in Florida, I mean, it's a kind of a pressing thing. Like, okay, we've led the country in net in-migration since COVID, right? And that is clearly a sign of success because people vote with their feet. They're fleeing bad policies. They're coming to a state that's free. They're coming to a state that's a law and order state. They're coming to a state that has all these different good qualities. And so we're proud of that. But I have supporters who'll say, Governor, who the heck are these people? Are they going to leave a blue state and then vote the same doggone way that people vote in New York or wherever, and then turn this state in that direction? And honestly, there is cause for concern, because if you look at, like, Texas would have all these companies move from California over the years. So you'd have companies move from San Francisco to Austin, and they'd bring hundreds of employees with them. And those employees would vote the exact same way they voted that turned San Francisco into the dumpster fire that it is. And it's like the leftism, they will not draw the connection between their leftist ideology and the destruction that's all around them. And so it is a problem, because I do think there's a class of voters who would come to Florida and they would continue to vote the same way. Well, here's the statistics. Not only have you seen the trend from D to R, if you look since COVID, all 49 other states, and you looked at each one individually, all 49 have had more Republicans move into Florida than Democrats move into Florida. And so that's pretty significant. Not one state has sent more Democrats to Florida than Republicans. So I think what that's telling me is that people are very sensitive to the state governments that they live under. I think COVID opened a lot of people's eyes, because literally who your governor was the difference between your kid even be able to go to school at all, or you being able to work, or your business able to be operational or not. And so I think that made people more sensitive. I think the riots caused people to say, you know what, if you don't have public safety, then none of this economy or education is going to matter much. You got to be safe. And they look to law and order states like Florida for leadership. So I think you have a lot of factors that is causing people to seek out jurisdictions that reflect their values more so than at any time in the history of the country.
He's a brilliant man, is he not? And a courageous man, and a man who knows what he wants to do. This is all very, very important. He's not malleable like a Romney or Susan Collins or Lisa Murkowski, who are influenced so heavily by the common culture, by the media, by the Democrat Party, and so forth. He's his own man. And that's why they're trashing him every day on cable TV, every day in the New York Times and the Washington Post. They fear Ron DeSantis as a potential presidential candidate. They fear him as a potential president down the road. And so they're already trashing him. And this is what you folks have got to remember. Whoever the Republican nominee is, this is what they're going to do to them. They'll try and get into the primary, try and cause trouble with Adam Kinzinger and Lizzie Cheney and Larry Hogan. None of these people have any hope of anything. But they'll try and stir the pot. They'll try and trash Trump enough with investigations and so forth to push him out. They're going to try as much as they can to dirty up DeSantis and so forth, because they want to pick our candidate and then they want to damage our candidate. So it's important to keep that in mind. We have got to stand behind the candidate we select as the conservative constitutionalists in this country. Casey DeSantis, I know her. My family knows her. We're friends with her, as we are with the governor. And we were friends with him before he was governor, when he was a freshman in the House of Representatives and was a standout then. These are very decent, classy people, the DeSantis family. And they have 3 children. And she has been fighting cancer. And she had all the treatments up to now. And she's out and about. And thank God it appears to be in remission. And she had procedures done, and I don't need to get into that. But this is a very close couple, Ron and Casey DeSantis. They a very solid couple in terms of their morals and their ethics. They are people of faith, and they love this country. And so Casey DeSantis shares how her husband Ron stood by her all through her cancer treatments and so forth, as he would take off time when he, whenever she needed him, and as much as possible, and with the kids, which was all the time to take care of his wife and his family, as he was still battling the virus and the pandemic for the rest of the state and battling the bureaucrats in Washington. So I thought you'd want to hear this. Go.
I get asked all the time, who is Ron DeSantis? Well, he's the kid who grew up right here in Florida, working his tail off, paying his own way through school, then volunteering to serve in the Navy and deploying to Iraq. He's the man who I fell in love with from the moment we met. And he's the dad of 3 very rambunctious, energetic children. Mamie, our 2-year-old little comedian, Madison, our beautiful, sweet 5-year-old, and Mason, our 4-year-old athlete. But if you want to know who Ron DeSantis really is, when I was diagnosed with cancer and I was facing the battle for my life, he was the dad who took care of my children when I couldn't. He was there to pick me off of the ground when I literally could not stand. He was there to fight for me when I didn't have the strength to fight for myself. That is who Ron DeSantis is.
Yep. It's a real family man. Nothing in his closet, I can assure you. And a great patriot, as well as you saw, a combat veteran. And a brilliant guy. Here's this young guy, smart guy, goes into the military, he's very athletic, winds up at Harvard when it's all said and done, and yet keeps his principles, the principles that were passed on to him from his children. This is why the left hates his guts. This is why the left are always trying to trip him up. He's truly a role model in the old sense of the statesman. Ron DeSantis is America's governor. That's why I call him America's governor. And I'm in Florida right now. And Florida is not just the freest state in the country, it's the freest place in the world. Florida is the freest place in the world. And one election can change that, you know. The Democrats want to make America into California. I want to make America into Florida. It's a big difference. That's why people are populating Florida and depopulating California and depopulating Illinois and depopulating New York and depopulating New Jersey. Because it's hopeless in these states. So they get up and they leave. They have no choice, even if there are multiple generations of families in these states and in these cities. You've got to take care of yourself and your flesh and blood, your family. And it's just not safe. It's just not rational, as a rational human being, to raise a family in these states anymore if he can leave. There's a lot of people who can't afford to, and they're stuck. But people speak with their feet, with their mobility, and there's a reason why certain states are growing, Texas, Florida, Tennessee, so forth, and certain states are dying, California, Illinois, New York, among them. And isn't it interesting that out of these states come people who lead the Democrat Party and wish to impose their will on the rest of the nation? Schumer out of New York, Pelosi out of California, and of course, Newsom wants to be the next president of the United States. Can you imagine? I can't. So the 1619 Project is a project intended to destroy America. And it is pushed and being pushed by the New York Times into thousands of school districts. There's about 14 or 15,000 school districts in the country. About a third or more, 40% of them, are using this 1619 Project, which was prepared by a non-historian and another one of these, in my view, racists with critical race theory and so forth. America didn't begin in 1619. And so you're supposed to dismiss 1776 and take this minor historical event in 1619 and project from there. And from there, they lie through their teeth that the American Revolution was fought for slavery. What are they talking about? The vast majority of Americans didn't even own slaves. Fought for slavery. And so you have all kinds of historians with all kinds of backgrounds, affiliated with one party or another, or not affiliated with one party or another. These are people that have won all kinds of awards, Pulitzer Prizes and so forth, coming forth and saying, no, that's not history. That's not what happened. So why is the New York Times pushing it? Why do they push everything they push? And these Louis Farrakhan types as well. And so, of course, we get a reporter that asks America's governor, and that's what I call DeSantis, because that's what he is, who asks America's Governor, why don't you allow them to teach the 1619 Project in your school systems? Because the media are always there to carry the flag and the propaganda for the Democrat Party. Their agendas are exactly the same. Let's take a listen, and this is from Rumble. Go.
I would tell them to read Florida statutes. We are required to teach slavery, the post-Reconstruction and segregation, civil rights. Those are core parts of American history that should be taught, but it should also be taught accurately. For example, the 1619 Project is a CRT version of history. It's supported by the New York Times. They want to teach our kids that the American Revolution was fought to protect slavery, and that's false. We know why the American Revolution was fought. They wrote pamphlets. We saw them dump tea into the Boston Harbor. We saw them meet in Philadelphia, and we have the records of why they revolted against King George III. And so it was the American Revolution that caused people to question slavery. No one had questioned it before we decided as Americans that we are endowed by our Creator with unalienable rights and that we are all created equal. Then that birthed abolition movements. So you can't teach history that's being used to pursue an ideological agenda. You can't teach that the foundations of our country were somehow evil. Our founders pledged their lives, fortune, sacred honor, and they put a marker in the sand. Not everything lived up to it right away, of course not, but every major movement in our country's history has gone right back to those core principles. So we want to teach history, all history. It's got to be accurate, though, and we are not going to be in a situation where we're taking George Washington's name off schools, taking down statues of Thomas Jefferson, and that's what those people who want CRT want to do. They want to change history. They want to delegitimize these folks, and that's not what we're doing. But don't let anyone tell you we don't want those subjects taught, because not only do we want it, we have it in statute that they must be taught.
Absolutely brilliant. I mean, this guy is absolutely brilliant. You know, they can't get one over on him. He's gone to the best schools. He's a combat veteran, was an athlete. He's extremely well-read. I happen to know he reads all the time, late into the night. That's why he was on top of the COVID virus. He was studying the data that his scientists in Florida would bring to him. And that's why he said, we don't need to prevent little kids from going to school in classroom. They don't need to wear masks, because he was looking not at Fauci, but the real science and the real scientists and the real medical professionals who are actually on the ground doing the work, both here and all over the world. How do I know? Because he told me that. Fauci's a bureaucrat. Fauci's spewing bureaucraties, and now we know the whole CDC was all gummed up with the teachers' unions and all the rest. But I want to build on something the governor said. If we were truly teaching about slavery, we'd be teaching about what happened before people were brought to the United States. Who imprisoned these people in the first place? Who imprisoned them in the first place? Now, there were slaves from all over the world, but most in the United States were black slaves. Africans, but not just Africans, from the Caribbean too. What would happen is Africa was a very violent place, like so much of the rest of the world. And they had various African empires and tribes on the continent of Africa, and they were, in many cases, at war with each other. And they'd been at war with each other for decades, if not longer. And the practice was, in many of these areas, that when you defeated a tribe, you took their people as slaves. You took their women as concubines. Not just in Africa, in the Middle East, and the Far East, and other places too. And some of these tribes would sell their slaves, or the captured members of the other tribe, to other countries, or to pirates, or to people who were involved in the slave trade. Typically, you didn't have people from Europe, the United States, or the Mideast going into Africa, conquering tribes, and grabbing slaves. Typically, they were buying the slaves from other Africans, brought into the United States. This is what one of the CNN commentators was explaining to Don Lemon when the issue of reparations came up in Britain. And she said, wait a minute, I believe in reparations, but if you want to pay reparations, it's not Great Britain. Now, on this issue of reparations, or this issue of slavery, we don't teach slavery. We teach it as if it began in America. That's very important that we teach about slavery in America. And I've written about it. It is a very, very bad mark on American history. There's simply no getting around that. But if you want to teach the history of slavery, there are fantastic scholars who are not political, not right-wing, left-wing, who've written chapter and verse on this subject, the names of the tribes, the names of the empires, what they used to do. Used to put them like people in cages in Africa and to sell them to the slave trade and so forth. That often happened in our own hemisphere, south of the border as well. And of course, it happened in the United States at some point as well. In the United States, or America, had to grapple with this for a long time. And in the end, the Great Civil War was fought, the bloodiest battle America has ever fought, even bloodier than World War II for America. And no other country on the face of the earth, no industrialized country, as we call us, ever fought a war over slavery, ever. We did. And so which party was involved in slavery in this country? Which party was aligned with the Confederacy? Which party did the President of the Confederacy and all the generals of the Confederacy belong to? Which states were dominated by this party? It's the Democrat Party. And so as this CNN contributor said to Don Lemon, reparations are to be paid, she was pointing to these various empires originally in Africa, and I point to the Democrat Party. I point to the Democrat Party. People who fought against slavery shouldn't have to pay reparations to anybody. Many of them lost lives of family members, or they were horribly, horribly wounded, as they had limbs sawed off. And many people living in this country, their ancestors weren't even here. So if there are to be reparations, if there is a price to pay, let's get our history straight. And that's one of the things the Democrats do not want, real history. They want to create history, rewrite history, project their own ideology onto history, and whatever history they don't like, they reject. But the history of slavery goes hand in hand with the history of the Democrat Party and the Confederacy. The history of segregation goes hand in hand with the Democrat Party and its politicians and its Supreme Court justices. Those weren't Republicans standing in schoolhouse doors. Not a single Republican governor, as I've said. Not a single Republican governor supported Jim Crow. Not a single Republican governor supported all kinds of tests before you could vote. Not one. The Democrats and the more radical, the leftists, they live in the wealthiest, whitest areas in the country. Now, I don't have a problem with that. White, black, live wherever you want, afford whatever you can. I hope you're successful. God bless you. But they have a problem with that. Are they going to eliminate single-family homes in Martha's Vineyard and have dense housing there? No. Public transportation? Well, how can you? So these people escape to islands, whether it's the Obamas or Kennedys or whomever, even our friend Alan Dershowitz, but many, many others. And this is where they live. These are Democrat, radical left, mostly wealthy, white enclaves. And they want nothing to do with the policies they promote. Nothing. This is why Joe Biden lives at Rehoboth Beach, has about the same diversity level as Martha's Vineyard. And still he builds a wall. A wall with your money, $500,000. The good thing is, though, that these people know how to climb walls. They've had experience down there on the southern border, and they're from all over the world, not just Central and South America. So I've been encouraging on the air the governors to send buses to Rehoboth Beach and drop people off right in front of Joe Biden's home because he's the perp. He's the biggest perp. But there's a young couple that have written a song that I think is apropos for this occasion. Apparently they do too. Here we go. Go.
Yeah.
We wrote a song
about Martha's Vineyard invasion.
It's tragic.
magic. Hashtag Martha's Vineyard strong.
Pound Martha's Vineyard.
Bring your hungry.
Bring your weary.
Bring your sick.
And bring your poor.
But keep your
ass off Martha's Vineyard. Don't come back no more.
Everybody.
They don't want criminals in this town of ours. They've tried Chicago, not Obama's yard.
Bring your hungry, bring your weary, bring your sick, and bring your poor. But keep your ass off Martha's Vineyard. Don't come back no more. They claim to have compassion, then promise streets of gold. When you come a-knocking, the signs all say we're closed. Bring your hungry, bring your weary, bring your sick, and bring your poor. But keep your ass off Martha's Vineyard. Don't come back no more. Keep your ass off Martha's Vineyard. They don't want you senior.
White supremacists. That's about right, isn't it? That's a great man. America's governor, as I call him, Ron DeSantis. So thanks for watching, and don't forget, go to blazetv.com/LevinTV, blazetv.com/LEVINTV. Use promo code MARK20, MARK20. You'll get $20 off your first year annual subscription. If you're re-upping or you want to give it as a gift, it's the perfect time to do it. 365, 24/7. It's the gift that keeps giving. You know, you give a tie. Well, there is a nice tie like this tie. But you give a tie, you give socks, you give candy, you give whatever. Going like that. This year long. See you next time.